Welcome to the Mindset Huddle Podcast, where sports and mental health meet. Now, here are your hosts, Carruthers and Andrew Grantz.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mindset Huddle. This podcast is for athletes, parents, coaches, teachers, and community members who want to better understand the mental side of sports, identity, pressure, leadership, and growth. Our goal is to not only build better athletes, but to build better people, because at the end of the day, sports will end for everyone someday, but mindset, character, and identity last forever. Before we get into it today, again, I'm always joined by Andrew Grantz, the Andrew Grantz. This episode is going to be a little different, and I'm going to be honest with you about why. We've spent most of our first three episodes talking about confidence, pressure, identity, and all of those things do matter. They do, but it's June, and June is Men's Mental Health Month. And as a coach and as someone who's worked with young men for a while, I feel like we'd be doing a disservice to every guy listening if we just kept going like it's a normal episode. Because here's what I know. I know that there are men listening to this right now, athletes, coaches, dads, guys grinding through something, and they carry a weight that nobody knows about. Not their teammates, their family members, maybe not even themselves, because they've gotten so good at pushing it down, they don't even feel it anymore. And the numbers back that up right now. Roughly 1 in 5 men in the United States are dealing with some sort of mental illness. 1 in 5 of those men, and one of those men are struggling, and less than half will ever get any kind of help. So this isn't because they don't want help, or the help isn't, or this isn't because they don't want the help isn't there. Goodness gracious. But because somewhere along the way, we've decided that asking for help wasn't what men do. And it's costing us. Men are dying at a suicide rate that is 4 times the rate of women. Men are making up nearly 80% of suicide deaths in the country. And among male athletes, nearly 1 in 3 in college athletes report experiencing anxiety or depression. And that's just the ones who admit it. I've been that guy. Andrew's been that guy. And if we were being honest, a lot of times we learn from the time that we were young, maybe in a locker room or around the dinner table, the coffee table, or wherever the guys hang out at the cookout. It's just something that you kind of push through and you figure it out on your own. And, there's something to be said about toughness. We're not here saying otherwise, but there is a difference between being tough and sucking it up or isolating yourself. And I think that's what something, that's kind of one of those things that we get confused with for a while. So we're going to take a different kind of conversation. We're going to talk about the things we normally don't talk about. And our hope is that by the time we end this episode, there is one guy out there that feels less alone in what he's carrying. So Andrew, I would be a goof if I didn't ask this question. How are you doing?
That's a great question for after the intro. Man, I'm doing great. I really, for us men, we we say that, right? I'm doing good. And then we just kind of go on. But, I honestly doing good. It saddens me to hear those statistics, though. I mean, that's heartbreaking, really.
It is. And, not to get too morbid or too dark, but, sometimes that young man or that man is someone you see every day who looks like they have it all together, and you don't even think to, I'll talk to him tomorrow, or he, something was off. And it's a sad reality that so many people live their last day thinking there is no other way but to not wake up tomorrow.
Yeah.
And again, our hope is, we're not mental health professionals. We're trained in certain things to identify signs and whatnot, but we understand our reach and our responsibility is to check in on those, and so So good. I'm glad to hear that. So let's dive into Act 1, kind of what we'll call the myth of a strong man. And we hope that we can identify a few things, what it means to be a man, what it looks like, and what we learned through sports about manhood. And so I have my answer for this. But when you were an athlete, what did it mean to be tough?
Well, I've got to honestly start off by saying that when I think back to my athletic career, I was not a tough athlete. I was not physically tough. I did not physically push myself like I should have. I wasn't nearly as mentally tough as what I should have been. I like to think as I've gotten older, I've learned to challenge myself a little bit more and push through that. But yeah, so I first thing I want everybody listening to this to understand that you're not hearing this from an athlete that was a mentally tough athlete. My freshman year, after high school, of my freshman year, we had our basketball banquet, and Joe Hinton, who's a Hall of Fame basketball coach, hundreds of wins, just had a day named after him in the town of Georgetown. Just an awesome coach that I looked up to. He gave a speech at our banquet, and he said, we had a lot of tough athletes this year. And he said, you know how I knew we had tough athletes? He said, because we have tough moms. And I thought about that. And as I've gotten older, I think about the moms that I know that are tough. And the moms that I know that are tough, they have hard days. They aren't afraid to show emotion, but they just keep showing up every day. And they just keep battling every day. And I think that picture of toughness is a really good picture, because as men, we think of toughness in a different way. But when we think about moms, like they're not afraid to open up, to just discuss what they're struggling with, to feel the emotion of it.
Yeah.
But they don't, those tough moms though, they don't stay in it. They keep grinding, they keep battling, they keep showing up for their kids every single day. And we all can think of that. And we all have had athletes that, maybe they have a single mom that, they are just a tough mom. And they're just, they're going to do anything for their kid, and they're going to struggle and have a hard time, but they're going to keep battling through. And for me, I think that is a great picture of mental toughness. Like it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to feel it. It's okay to process it, but then you show up again and again and again. And so I think that's a great way to view, mental toughness.
Yeah, no, that's great. And when I think about it, it's very similar. The analogy you painted was elegant in itself. There's just growing up in not necessarily specifically my example, but you hear stories all the time of people who made it professionally, who literally said, man, if I saw my mom working this many jobs, or this is what our house is like, like it was, we had to do this to survive. And, I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and, we work with a population that is very, fragile in the sense where they've come through some stuff. And so I was made the comment, I was like, I had a kid who I taught him, when he was in 8th grade, and he told me, he had a kid very young, and he was like, man, I didn't start getting in trouble until I had to do other things to survive for myself and for my child. And that desperation, that need is what I strongly believe drives you to toughness. And shout out to Coach Hinton, man. Some would call him the GOAT. Especially here locally, man, what he's been able to do is incredible. But what was a phrase you heard in sports? Something a coach or a teammate said that made you realize, now that you're a little bit older, a little bit wiser, that you were suppressing how you feel. I know the first one that came to my mind is, are you injured or are you hurt? But yeah, what's your answer there?
Man, when I go back to my playing career, uh,
Mhm.
I'm serious, man. I was not, when you think of toughness, it was not like I was the type of kid, like I wore my emotions on my sleeve. Like my dad still to this day will tell me, he's like, I know exactly how you're feeling at all times, because he's like, you just, you get them. I'm more emotional. And
Yeah.
so I don't know so much about when I was a player, but some of the things that I did hear that I've come to learn later on in life. Number one, when I got into coaching in my early 20s, I had a coach tell me one time when I was working a summer camp, a college coach, he said, look, if you don't love this more than you love everything else in your life, get out of coaching now, because you'll never make it. You're going to be I mean, basically just like, you know,
Right.
what are you
Right.
wasting your time for? And then the other one, that I heard was, if you want to be great, if you want to be the best ever, you got to be willing to sacrifice everything. And what I want to be careful of, people listening, is like, yes, you do have to sacrifice. You need to sacrifice playing
Mhm.
video games. You need to sacrifice,
Mhm.
you know, getting that extra hour of sleep, so you can wake up early, sacrifice going to bed. Like, yes, there's good things to sacrifice. But I think for me, when it comes to mental health, especially as I got older, it was the putting everything into your identity, putting everything into your sport, literally everything that you're willing to sacrifice it all, and everything that you have to love it more than anything to be successful. And that is common in sports, that if you're not willing to do that, you won't be successful. And man, when you get your priorities out of whack like that, it could cause a lot of mental health issues.
Oh yeah. Well, and I mean, how many times, I was one of my coaching mentors would say it all the time. And I make it a point to say it amongst our staff, amongst our players. It's not what you do, it's how you do it.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you that the coach that really transformed the coaching sphere, going from, really grinding 8-hour days, getting home late at night, you don't get to see your family pretty much,
Yeah.
was Coach Signetti. And he's like, we go 90 minutes, hard, fast paced, intense. There's not a lot of downtime, and it's his motto, though he doesn't say it this way, he might. But it's not, again, not what you do, it's how you do it.
Yeah.
And, I hope those out there listening, especially our young athletes, get that in your head. 4 hours in a gym versus an hour and a half. 4 hours in a gym with a lackadaisical workout, just to
Yeah.
say you're in the gym, is more negative than it is to be in there an hour and a half, and going full speed, game speed, really pushing yourself. Um, and that's I like what you said there in terms of just, you know people. And well, I guess it goes to like the bigger thing of toughness. Like, it's you're tough if you sacrifice. You're tough if you work long hours. You're tough if you do this. Tough if you do that.
Mm.
But it's no one says you're tough if you can manage your time. No one says you're tough if you can, um, you know, be able to disconnect from a situation that's kind of toxic or it's kind of driving you crazy.
Hmm.
And that's, another thing I hope that those listening pick up on is, getting out and taking a walk and enjoying nature for 15 minutes is a lot more productive and good for you than it
Yeah.
is grinding through a break, grinding through a lunch.
Dude, that's so
Um,
good. That's so good. Uh,
yeah.
that's great. You're absolutely right. I mean, think about it, when you're trying to build toughness physically and you go and you work out. If you go lift weights for 6 hours a day, every single day, your muscles will be like pudding. I mean,
Mhm.
they're the best professional bodybuilders go and lift for an hour, maybe two, but then they rest and they
Mhm.
recover and they become tougher. They become stronger through the resting that
Right.
that helps them. And so they build physical toughness by pushing themselves intensely for a short amount of time, but they take advantage of the rest.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And that leads us right into our next question. Men in sports are often praised for playing through pain, shaking things off, being coachable. But I mean, the ultimate question was, when does that become harmful? And I think we've kind of bled into that, and where is there a line? it's we often talk about the attention span of the kids we've coached, 14 to 17 or 18. It's about 15 minutes. Now I've been in some programs where we've had long film sessions, and it's you kind of it's long. It's long for me as a coach, but that's people have different styles. So I'd be interested to hear where you think that line. And it's not going to be, yes, there is some science, but really it's a case by case scenario. And I want to hear your answer because I don't want to talk through my answer just yet.
Yeah, no. When we're just from a physical standpoint, I will tell you that my first year as a head coach, my practices were about 3 hours long. We would go, we'd watch film. We would get on the court for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then we'd do, additional shooting and conditioning afterwards. And I would say our first year that we didn't achieve everything that we wanted to. Matter of fact, our first year we had, some injury issues, probably because our practices were so long. I got to see Terry Perica, who is a multiple state champion volleyball coach at
Shout out Coach Perica.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been so fortunate, man, just to be around some of the best, just to get to soak in their wisdom. I'm watching her practice, winning state championships, and she's going like half the time that I am. And I just realized, I was like, man, I'm spending all this time and effort just to spend all this time. I need to shorten my practices like her. I need to get more intentional with what I'm doing. And here's the other thing, and this goes to the mental toughness part of it too. I just need to be okay with getting done with what we need to get done. And if we don't accomplish it today, then you know what? Maybe today, not necessarily a failure, but use it as motivation to come back fired up tomorrow. I don't have to stay all night until we get it just right. And we go on the second year and we take a different approach to practice. We shorten it. We go a little more intense. We just say, hey, this is our time. And if we don't achieve what we want to do in this time, then we come back tomorrow and we better fix it tomorrow. And we were so much sharper. We were so much better. We won 10 more games the second year. We had a better postseason run. We were a little fresher. And I really do believe is just because, hey, we set the time frame of this is the time that we have. This is the work that we're going to put in. But once our time's up, we can only do so much. I literally was just talking to a college coach yesterday that we were having this very discussion about. He was talking about just coaching differently and not totally, we talked about mental health and just coaching differently and not totally wearing himself out. And he was like, man, the biggest thing I struggle with at the college level is just being able to say, like, this is the time that I have, and I need to stop at this time and go home. And I need to be a dad, and I need to disconnect, and I need to be a husband. And he was like, it's hard because you want perfection with what you're doing. But he was like, you can't, it's just humanly impossible to be great at everything. You have to decide what those priorities are.
Right. And, there are some coaches out there who believe in the longer film sessions, the longer practices, and they have had success.
Yeah.
And I hope those who are listening are not sitting here thinking about who that person is or, oh man, my coach was terrible. You can still be a great coach and do things. But today in such a easy come, easy go kind of a lifestyle, just be mindful, just everything, just, one thing my mom always said when I was growing up was find a balance in everything you do, find a balance. And that's kind of what we're saying. We're not saying those who prefer, longer practices or more rigorous film sessions are scum of the earth, but, find the balance, find you. And I think that's a part of being tough as well as diving into who you are and what works best for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I recently came across a clip the other day. It was Michael Beasley, former NBA player. He's a fighter now. I think he just fought Lance Stevenson. But he was talking, and he's been a guy who has been public with some of his mental health struggles. And he said he was on the bus one day, and Josh Hart, star player on the Knicks, went up to him and said, "Hey, are you okay?" Gave him a hug. And at the time, Beasley didn't realize that he was portraying a body language that indicated something was wrong with him. But he remembers that moment, and he has nothing but respect for Josh Hart. And so to take that, did you ever have a teammate you knew was struggling and nobody said anything? What kind of stopped that conversation from happening? That "are you okay" conversation, or I guess we can break this down into a two-part question, a loaded question. Have you ever noticed your teammate or a kid who was kind of, I don't want to say sluggish, but kind of down with their body language? And he was, we'll start there. We'll stop there.
Yeah, usually when it comes to coaching, like if I've ever seen a kid down with body language, usually there's something going on at home. You may not know it then, or kind of see it then, or hear about it, but usually I'd find out afterwards. It might be, maybe mom and dad are and having issues, or, man, I've coached kids like when I was down in Florida. I coached some kids that had a tough time, and theirs was just mom's working 3 jobs and she's never home, and I'm in charge of my younger sibling, and I've got to get them everywhere, and I also want to be a star athlete, and I got to figure out how to stay eligible, and they're just taking the world on their shoulders, just because mom's working her tail off day and night trying to put food on the table. And they're just, the thing I've learned from coaching is there's usually something more going on. When you're dealing with athletes that, body language catches them like that. I did have a time early on in my coaching career. I was coaching at Pitt State. We had an athlete on our team. We actually knew what was going on. I didn't say anything because I didn't know what to say. But this athlete, his best friend was into some drugs and dealing drugs and stuff like that. And this happened kind of midweek or later in the week. And his best friend got shot 15 times. They threw his body in the dumpster just to kind of send a message. And the guy on our team, obviously was just, having a tough time with it. So we're playing in a game, Saturday afternoon game. This is at a Division II school, and there's maybe like 3 minutes left in the game. It's a close game, and it, like, his emotions just, I don't know if it's the emotion of the close game or what it was, but it was just too much for him to handle. And he just came out of the game and went down to the end of the bench and was just crying and beside himself. And I still remember in that moment, I was like, I don't know what to do right now. I don't know what to say. Like, do I go down there? Does he want to be by himself? It was like the awkwardness of it. And so I chose to do nothing, which was a horrible decision. But our other assistant coach just went down with him. Our other assistant coach is like in charge of the defense. It's a close game. And he's just like, forget it. And he just goes down with him, puts an arm around him, and just starts praying with him. And it calmed that player in the moment. And that's exactly what that kid needed in the moment. And I just remember thinking for myself, like, man, that was really easy. Like, I could have done that. Like, that required no effort. So I've kind of kept that going forward. Like, sometimes sometimes our athletes just need an arm around them and a prayer and just squeeze them tight. When I think back to my own personal story, I was that athlete that had something happen. When my mom passed away when I was 16, suddenly in a car accident. And I can remember feeling from my end of it, like being around people and there being like awkward silence, like after that, because no one's fault. But I could tell people were just like, do I bring it up? Do I not bring it up? Like, do I mention it? If I mention it, is it going to set him off? If I say anything about his mom, is it going to, cause him some emotional distress? I'll just say this. Everybody's different. But for me personally, I I didn't want the awkwardness, and I didn't want people to feel like they had to treat me different. And I didn't want people to be afraid to bring it up. I'd rather just, let's get it out in the open. Let's just talk about it and let's move on and let's have fun and move, and go forward with life. So my advice to people listening to this, if you know somebody that's going through something and you're like, I don't know if I should say something or not, just say something. Because that person knows that you're feeling, like they can feel that from you. Right. I can feel that from the people around me. And it's like, just say something and let's just like rip the awkwardness off, rip the Band-Aid off. And let's just move forward and that's what I wanted in that moment. Again, every person might be different, but I would venture to say that most people are like, I don't want it to be awkward. I just want it to be normal. And if we got to talk about it, like, let's talk about it for a few minutes and let's go on with our lives.
Well, and I mean, you gotta think like, if you can't, like, finding a place to escape from all of the external things where things feel like it was normal or how it was before is also needed as well. You know what I mean? I think, I can only imagine, what it was like, but I would, dare I say, I guarantee you kind of went into the locker room hoping that like you said, like, hey guys, like, come on, like, this is our spot where we get ready to go to battle. We do this, we do that, we kick it, we tell jokes, that's what I need right now. I need that sense of normalcy so that it doesn't feel weird. And, it's going back to like the awkwardness, I think of, like the TV shows where like someone walks into the room and it's a packed house and it just goes completely quiet. That's like the last thing people want when they're going through something.
Yeah, that's how I felt. Funny story. I had a kid in class my junior year. This was maybe 3 or 4 months after my mom had passed, and he was just messing with me, and he made a "your mama" joke. And right when he said it, it didn't bother me at all. I'm like, it's a "your mama" joke, like whatever. Yeah. But I could tell right when he said it, like he caught himself, and then he just got this like look in his eyes, and he was just like, I don't know what to do right now. Like he just froze. So I just like kind of made a "your mama" joke back to him, and I was like, dude, it's all good, man. Like I know you didn't mean anything by it. Like for me, I was like, I just don't want the awkwardness. Like, just be normal, or be how you normally are. Let's just talk about it. It's all good. Right. And I think and I've been on the other side too, where somebody that's going through something and you're like, I don't know if I want, and we end up making it more awkward. And sometimes like, just talk about it, just get it out in the open, and then we'll get back to normal much quicker.
Yeah. No, to last thing we'll say about the specific topic here, or this question, I want to reference golly, I feel like all I do is reference clips or videos or commercials I've seen, but it's how I connect things. But there was a commercial that came out several years ago, and it was a really awkward commercial. These teens are sitting on a couch, and it's a Seize the Awkward campaign. I can't remember which national organization put it out, but it was really all about just asking, are you okay? And so I want to segue that into, I would feel like we didn't do our job here if we didn't speak to our athletes here, or our students, or our young adults who see, they have an opportunity to see their peers or their classmates on a day in and day out basis. And they might wonder, like, he's not in a good mood today, or he's being weird today, or he's being quiet. I challenge you just to ask that question of, hey man, what's going on? Or hey friend, what's going on? To our female listeners, or like, hey, is everything okay? And you don't have to have a script, you don't have to have words just pop into your head, but I guarantee you just that act of a small act of kindness will immediately ease all the tension that is in that person, or that classmate, or that whoever that is. So for you young bloods out there, remember that. Do you think sports culture has gotten better about this? Or do you think it still largely teaches men to wear a mask And what do you see in the athletes that you coach from a performance standpoint? Golf coach as well, the athletes you coach, kind of what are you seeing? Do you think there's a trend nationally in opening up and talking and being able to bring down your guard?
Yes, but I think it's fake.
Mm-hmm.
In all reality, I think what's happening in sports is like the whole confidence. I think what we think is confidence, what we see athletes being confident is a facade. I think it's a front. I think athletes that are in your face, that are boisterous, that are making a play and looking at you and going, "You're too small,"
Yeah.
and doing that after every good play they make. Why do they do that? Why do you have to make a statement about how bad someone else is because you made a great play? Well, because you're not confident in yourself, so you got to make them feel small so you can feel bigger.
Right.
If you were really, in a good spot, you wouldn't have to say anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing too is the transfer culture has hurt this. I think we need to learn how to be vulnerable with our own teammates. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to war with those guys every single day. At the end of the day, that's what sports is. Sports is a safe and controlled and a positive simulation of warfare. I mean, really, it's my team versus your team. I win, you lose. We have a team motto, a team song. They have a national anthem. I mean, that's literally what it is.
Yeah.
But when you go into battle with your teammates, you need to know what your team, like the strength of the team is knowing maybe what your teammates' fears are. Like if I know what the guy next to me is afraid of, I can have his back when that happens. If I know where his vulnerabilities are, I can have his back when that happens. And so we got to open up with that with our teammates. But then when we go and we attack the enemy, we don't want to show that vulnerability, and that's fine. You shouldn't. You're trying to win. You're trying to succeed. But we're missing out on this. And the reason I say the transfer portal or the transfer culture is killing this is because we don't have that. We don't have those tight knit units anymore.
Right.
You don't have athletes that are together in it for the long term that really, truly trust each other, that I could pour my heart out to you. I could tell you what my biggest fears are. I could tell you what what I think, how I feel. I could tell you these things, and I know you're going to support me and I'm going to support you because we are on the same team together. We could say that, and this is where I say it's fake. I mean, we could say that, and then 8 months later, they're like, I'm out. I'm going somewhere else. Well, now I go to the other team and I'm playing you next year, and I know what your fears are. Guess what I'm attacking, right? And so athletes are like, well, I can't open up. I can't be vulnerable with my friends, my teammates. I can't do that because I don't trust. They might be going against me in the future. They might use that against me to take my spot. And so, no, I think that the sports culture is actually destroying that. And I think when we go, oh, well, we got to open up and do, I think it's, I don't think it's real. I don't think it's as authentic as it used to be.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting perspective and that's one that I haven't necessarily thought about. Again, you see ads. I do think that there are some athletes and some groups in some areas where it's cheesy, to sit down and have this conversation. I do think it has to be organic amongst our youth. And I wonder if, I'm not going to say I don't think, but I wonder if, if a coach brings one thing kids don't like to do is be called out, right? If you're going through something, you know, I don't think one of our players wants to be like, would love it if I'm like, hey, yo, Steve, why are you pouting, bro? you know, or I wouldn't say that for full disclosure. If I noticed something crazy going on,
Yeah.
um, but I do wonder, and have a follow up question as well. But I do wonder, there's opportunities I think that are healthy for the boys to not necessarily have to worry about us peeking over their shoulders. Um, and now I'm not talking like hours and hours of unwatched time or unsupervised time, but that time getting ready in the locker room. If you got some guys who've even instilled good values in, um, can they, if they see something or maybe they bring it to you and you call the player to the side, stuff like that. But um, I do have a question, and I wonder what you think. Is there such thing as a team being too close? And what I mean by that is knowing what irritates a teammate or a
Mm.
friend, and it's not meant to be negative in a bullying situation, but it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get him what they call it, rage baiting these days. Like I'm just going to rage bait
Yeah.
and get a reaction. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, no, I think you just got to know the line with that. Like I think of
Mhm.
I've got me and my best friend and another one of my best. So there's like three of us that we went to high school together and we've remained great friends. And one of them, he is one that we rage bait, and and he's easy to get fired up,
Mhm.
but he knows it, and like he laughs about it. But that also is the same friend group that we've had some really real serious conversations, and so we
Right.
also know kind of, all right, like he's going through something, let's not mess with him today.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
know if it's being like too close, but there is something about knowing people's tendency. I think you got to check where your heart is. Like,
Right.
are you like when we mess with our buddy, we do it out of, hey, we're just having fun. Like we really do love you, and we're just like we're all having
Yeah.
fun together. Like if it gets to a point where it's too much, um, like we'll back off. Like you want your heart to be in the right spot.
Right. Right.
Where with kids, with teenagers, um, sometimes it's just we're just doing it because it's entertaining. And if you're doing
Mhm.
it for your benefit, for your entertainment, then it's not good. But if you're doing it to joke around and just let somebody know, like, hey, I care about you, we'll have a little bit of fun. But
Yeah.
if it's serious, like we're not going to do this. And
Yeah.
so it's more about the posture of your heart.
Yeah. Jumping into our second segment for the day. I know so many will be disappointed that we don't have rapid fire today, but we're going to jump into a segment called "What I Wish I'd Said," um, and there's it's really just that. So take us to a specific season of your year or year in your life, athletic or after, when you were genuinely not okay. What was
Mm,
going on? What did you let people see versus what you were actually feeling?
yeah. Man. So, full transparency here. I don't mind opening up because I hope the listeners get something out of this. So we talked before we went on air. It's talked about Paul, boasting about his weakness because in his weakness, is where he could show the strength of God. This is definitely a story for me, and just some vulnerability. But whenever I was finishing up my basketball coaching career, that last season, I had my son was born. At that same time, I found out just some stuff about my mom's life before her death.
Mhm.
That just it hit me real hard. I found out about the same time, just going through some counseling, that like the birth of a child or major life events, if you've lost someone or experienced trauma from that loss, that can bring a lot of emotions and things back up. I When you're the head coach of a program that's a historical program in the state of Indiana, you cannot show weakness. You cannot show that you got personal stuff going on. Nor does people. And here's the thing. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that do care.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that don't care.
Right.
And so I was going through a time then to where it was just crazy, man. Like everything knocked me off my feet just all at once. Started having these dreams that like literally every single night that I was just like searching for my mom. I finally would find her. And then she would tell me, she's like, I found this other family. I don't want you anymore. And like, I would wake up in like sweats, and it was just like, it was disturbing, to me. Just, it upset my soul. And that was a tough moment in my life. Not to mention at the time my newborn son is just a couple weeks old, and it should be a very joyous time in my life, but I got like all this just past stuff just like coming up all at once and just smacking me in the face with it. And on top of that, I'm trying to lead young men and lead a program, to success, and do that job well. And it just was too much for me to juggle. It was very difficult. Now, through my past experiences with having dealt with, my mom's accident and going to counseling before and having anxiety before, I knew I needed to get into counseling. I knew I needed to go talk to somebody. So I was fortunate enough, to jump into there. And I didn't even mention my panic attacks, my anxiety attacks. I could feel them starting to come back. They weren't as bad as what they were last time, because I knew kind of ways to distract myself from that. But I could just tell that it was getting worse.
Yeah.
And, I won't forget, I went and talked with a counselor that was also a pastor at my church. And we just had some conversations. And I remember one time he asked me a question. I don't even remember what the subject was or what the question was, but he asked me a question, and it was a question that was like an emotional question. And I started rattling off in my head. I started reasoning, and he just kind of looked at me and he said, "Would you stop?" And he said, you're trying to go through this logically, and you're trying to use your head to get out of this. And you just need to shut up and feel it in your heart. And you just need to sit in it and feel it. And I didn't, and I kind of kept going, and he kind of yelled at me, and he was like, "Would you just shut up?" And I was like, okay. And man, I just sat there for just like 20 seconds, just quiet, closed my eyes. And I was like, I'm just going to feel the pain of this. And, man, I just like broke into tears. Like it was hard, and it hurt, and I didn't want to be in that moment. And I kept wanting to try to go back to my head to try to talk or, and every time I would, he'd be like, "Shh, quiet." Like, just feel it. And that was stuff, like years of stuff that I just had, that's just been bottled up in there, that I just had to get out. And I think some people would look at that and go, "Oh, well, that's not very tough. Like, you're sitting there crying." But what was the alternative? To keep just grinding and just be in over my head and not be able to lead well and not lead my family well, and to not be and have anxiety. Like, that's not making myself or anyone else around me better. And so sometimes that toughness part of it is just sitting in it for a moment, to just be like, man, I'm just going to feel it, and I'm going to process it. I'm going to continue to move on through it, so that I could be better for other people, that I could be better for the people around me, and try to be a better version of myself.
Yeah, no, that's a powerful story, man. And I always appreciate you opening up. And, here's the thing, life and negative circumstances do not discriminate. You can be family of a middle class family, a high class family, and encounter a situation of misfortune, or you can be someone who's low income, and we don't need to go into the chances of which things happening, but I do think that there are people out there who listen to your story and they're encouraged, and keep telling that, and keep just being a light to so many. It seems like crazy stuff is happening left and right, and you realize, you sit back and you're like, man, that's like 1 to 2, 3 degrees of separation. I know
Yeah.
somebody who knows somebody who knows that person. So um, no, again, I appreciate that. Now, before we jump into this next question, you mentioned, your ability to just already know where to go to begin that healing process.
Hmm.
What would you say to someone who may not know kind of the difference between therapy or counseling, or who may not necessarily, all the signs, if you're looking from an objective standpoint, we could sit there and say, yes, you need to talk to a professional. Or I won't say you need to, I'll say it would be helpful to talk to a professional.
Yeah.
What was, that voice for you that really encouraged you to seek um, additional help?
Well, here's one way to think about it. If if you're a basketball coach and you have this great play in your head, and you're like, and it's rattling in your head, and you're like, ooh, I can see this, this, and this, and then you go and put it on paper, and you're like, maybe not, or you got all these ideas in your head, and you go and you organize them on paper, and then all of a sudden they come to life. So number one is just getting like unjumbled out of your head. Like when we leave things in our head, it's just we spin constantly. So sometimes it's just getting out of our head. So that like going and talking to a professional, that's one thing. Like it's not about like weakness or toughness or sometimes it's literally just I got a lot of thoughts going on and I just need to talk to somebody to help me
Yeah.
get them organized so that I could put them back in there that in a way that is productive to me. Uh,
Mhm.
then the second part of it is, you know, think about the best basketball players in the world. Every single one of them has needed a coach to help them get to where they are. Steph Curry would not be the greatest shooter in the history of basketball if he didn't have his dad working with him growing up, if he didn't have his coaches working with him now, if he didn't have Steve Kerr and Mark Jackson and all the and Bob McKillop, his college coach, like every single person played a part in that, and he wouldn't be as great as what he is without the help of others guiding him along the way. Did he have the skill? Did he have the ability inside of him? Yes. And so for me, when I thought about going and seeking, counseling and seeking help like that, it was more of like I viewed them as like they're a coach, like they're
Yeah.
somebody I could go talk to that I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to have this anxiety. I don't want to have these dreams about my mom not wanting me. I don't want to. I don't want to have my child's birth have a cloud over it because of
Mm.
my past stuff that I'm dealing with. Like I want to be joyful. I just need to go see that counselor. I need to go see that coach, that person that's going to coach me through that to get me to where I want to be. And every
Yeah.
great athlete has had a coach that has helped them get them to where they want to be. And so that's how I try to view counselors and therapists.
Right. No, that's great. That's great. What did you tell yourself um, to justify not asking for help? Was it, I don't want to burden anyone? Kind of during some of those times, people have it worse. I know there's plenty of times where I've gotten myself in situations and I didn't ask for help from the people who loved me the most. And part of that reason was, well, I got myself in this situation, I can get myself out.
Yeah.
Or it was, are they, it was, I don't want to burden anyone, and I think those are all lies and excuses that are fed to us. by the evil one to get us to not be better. Because when we are at our peak serving our Lord and Savior, that's at a detriment to the evil one. And so, um, what would you say in that? I guess in it again, we don't have to make it personal, but
Yeah.
like I said, I know that and to kind of feed to those lies,
Yeah.
what are yeah.
One would be the lie that nobody cares.
Mhm.
This kind of goes back to the question you asked earlier, and it just kind of popped in my head. But something you heard as an athlete growing up
Yeah,
is like
yeah,
just do this and do that, either win or lose, but nobody cares. Like win. Nobody cares about that you're doing this. Nobody cares that you're going through that. Nobody cares that you're dealing with this outside of practice. Like show up on time, do your job. Nobody cares.
right.
Let me say, that's not something to take advantage of. I have seen, and maybe you have too, athletes that go the other way and they're like, boo hoo, feel sorry for
Mhm.
me. They're just looking for the easy way out. But what I'm talking about is you have something going on that's affecting you. It's easy to say that lie, to be like, well, nobody cares. Like when I was coaching, I got to win. Nobody cares that, I'm having, I'm borderline panic attacks. Like my job
Mhm.
is to win. So I think the key is that to know that there always is someone who cares. It's just
Right,
it's going to those people that care. You're right.
right.
There might be other people that they don't care. They want to see you produce, and that's okay. But there always is someone on the other side that does care beyond your performance.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's good stuff there. Going back to being a player or coach and noticing someone who isn't acting themselves, you know, you kind of said this a lot, and the question I had originally wrote out was there ever a moment yet you wanted to say something to a parent coach or a player coach or a teammate, and then a parent, and I was like, oh man, us coaches, we always have something we want to say to a parent. Um, being facetious here, but um, you know, what stops you, I guess, from again kind of recycling through, and if there's an alternative answer, we can hit that answer, but just again, what do you think keeps people more than just, and maybe it's just that, maybe it is just, I don't know what to say, but what are some of the other reasons that we as human beings don't check in on our people that we see obviously having a problem? And while you think about that, I was having a conversation today over coffee with a gentleman who we were talking about, just noticing needs in our community, whether it's homelessness, hunger, you know, so on and so forth. And we oftentimes tell ourselves, well, if I give this person this, how do I know they're going to spend it in the right way?
Mm.
Or they're out here on the street, obviously hooked on drugs. They're just going to go buy some more drugs. I'm not giving them any money. But I think I'm always thinking, and that Jesus wasn't. I wonder if what I wonder if we saw Jesus today, in the way that he was described in the Bible and in historical doctrine, if we would think he was that guy who wouldn't spend money the wrong way, or you know what I mean, um, or if we saw him walk, because it doesn't mention him having an upper echelon life. He was the son of a carpenter, and Mary. Um, I just wonder, and could be getting off on a tangent here, but bring us back home. Bring us back home.
No, I like it. That's a good thought. I want to come back to that because yes, that is. I I'll say this first to your point. I think with the thing that we don't have that Jesus did have is the insight and the wisdom to see the heart of people. If we don't know somebody, we just have to judge them based off of their actions. Jesus
Mhm.
Jesus sees our hearts.
Mhm.
He knows he knows us better than we know us, and so and he was still generous, and even to the ones that he knew were going to turn him down, he was still generous.
Yeah.
Um, so that, yeah, there is something to be said about that. The kind of going back to the real quick to the I thought of another argument or another reason that maybe people don't say something. And this is as much as I hate to say it, like I know I've been in this situation before, but sometimes we don't say something because of self-preservation,
Mhm.
right? Like, man, if I say something, is this person going to view me differently? Or if I say something, is this going to affect the relationship in a negative way? Um, and we kind of do it out of maybe it's just best for me if I don't say anything. And
Right.
man, that's I don't know. I say it right now because it's coming to me, and I feel like the Holy Spirit right now is like, man, like that's hitting my heart. Uh,
Yeah.
like I better start thinking about how I'm loving on people and missing opportunities. Am I skipping those opportunities because it's easier for me?
You're right.
Yeah.
Right. Or um, in a similar conviction, sometimes it's that person you just don't love conversing with,
Mm,
who you always have a complaint against them. It's this loudmouth. Thinking back to the days in school, like he's so just gives me the you know. Um, and sometimes, you know, uh, those people are going through it too,
mm,
and we'll wrap up this this question here with just kind of, hey, um, put yourself in those shoes. What would you want if you were going through something? Not that we go through stuff to draw attention to ourselves. Um, there are times where you're legitimately going through something and you don't know per se that you're displaying that body language that screams, I need to talk to someone. um but when you do find yourself in that situation, like, think about the person you see who's doing that same thing, and how much it would be helpful to ask just that, are you okay? What's going on? Let's talk. Or and if you're not a talker, it could look something like, "Hey, I got you an extra cheeseburger from McDonald's,"
yeah.
or I got you something," or "Hey, you need this." Um, just that general, if you're not that, like I said, if you're not that talker, um, and again, man, I feel it too, where it's like, golly, I need to be a better person over here.
I will say you kind of mentioned a point, and I do want to make sure that we're clear on this in this episode because again, I do want to make sure there's a difference between knowing when to go and talk to somebody for help and not being afraid to do that. But then on the other side of it, for example, I know someone personally that years ago put on social media, I need a lot of prayers right now.
Mhm.
Everybody's, oh, is everything okay? Everything okay? Well, the person that I knew personally, I knew the family member. Family member calls them. What is going on? What do you need prayers about? Is everything okay? She literally says, well, I needed to put that out there because I needed to get more responses on my social media page so I could get followers. And it's like, you know, there. So I do want to make sure that we understand going forward. Like, be vulnerable and be real. Don't be fake about it, and don't. It's
Yeah,
not self-seeking. It's not a. I'm trying to benefit myself, but in a selfish way. But it's we're talking about situations where it's I really need some help right now.
right. Right. And that could get us going on a whole another hour
Yes.
of just,
I just wanted to delineate between the
yeah,
two. Yeah.
yeah. We'll close this off. We got a few more before we jump into our last segment here. But on the flip side, you had some notes about, someone who reached out to you at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, how did you take that? How did it make you feel? Um, so many times you know, it can be hard to accept, and I don't know much about this, but, sometimes you'll be pouting after a game, or as an athlete pouting after a missed shot or something, and you hear, "Hey, suck it up," and it's not so much to be rude and insensitive. It is hey, at the end of the day, is this going to matter?
Right.
And oftentimes, when again, the difference between suck it up when you're going through the death of a family member or a friend,
Yes.
versus a missed shot or a bad game, and so one, let's talk about the difference between the two, if you want to get into that.
Yeah.
Two, we'll get into, kind of what was said to you at the right moment. And, what did they say, do? How did it land? How'd you take it?
Yeah, no, I definitely think it comes back to what we said earlier, when I was talking about the coaching thing, when I had people coming to me saying, you got to sacrifice everything. You got to be willing to love, the sport more than anything else. At the end of the day, it comes to like priorities and understanding what's important and what's not important. And so, yes, there is some things where, and you said earlier too, the difference between being injured and being hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's why I wasn't a mentally tough athlete, and I can tell you is I remember my senior year, I was thinking about maybe trying out for the basketball team. I didn't play my junior year. It's like, maybe want to play senior year because everybody around me wanted me to play. I did a little preseason conditioning, and I was like, nah, I'm done. I wasn't injured. I was just, my legs were burnt. Yeah. And I was like, that's so mentally weak. Like that's
right.
Because it's sometimes it's just sucking it up and getting through it. Now driving down the road, having a panic attack, going 15, and I've told this story before, going 15 miles per hour over a bridge, because I'm freaking out. There's no like sucking up and getting through that on your own. Like that's not in a way that's an injury, right? Like you got to rehab the injury. And so yes, it's understanding the priorities, understanding the things that are important in life, the things that are healthy to push through, and then understanding the things that are unhealthy to try to push through on your own, and knowing the difference between the two.
Yeah, and real quick, I want to draw attention to this, and I want to make sure everyone understands that's listening. We have referred to the instance of the body language being more loathful and loathing around and not talking and being sad as an indication that someone is not doing well. But also, if you notice, like little Timmy who goes to bed at 9 a.m. and then all of a sudden he's staying up until 3, 4, 5 a.m. That's a behavior that is not typical of him. And so, yeah, people have different ways of coping. Yeah, sadness could be an easy indicator. But also, if you notice uncharacteristic, just untraditional, unnatural behavior that John is sitting in class and all of a sudden he is crying all the time, causing a disruption, as a former educator, it was like, whoa, like, something's definitely going on because this is a model student here. And so I want you to pick back up, but I wanted to make sure we express that clearly as well as we're talking about this.
For sure. No, that's a great point. No, I think the second part of the question was kind of the moment in my life somebody said something to me, and actually I was trying to rack my brain on some of those moments, but really it wasn't even necessarily something that was said directly to me. After my mom passed a few months later, I just got really into partying. I was like, I'm going to deal with her passing. I'm going to distract myself. I was 16. I'm going to just drink on the weekend. I'm going to go out and party every Friday, every Saturday night. I'm going to, say that I'm going to a friend's house, but sneak out and go to, just that kind of stuff. And I don't know who it was to this day. I have no idea. But somebody's parent got wind that I was heading down this path, heading down this road, and they reached out to my dad. And my dad came to me, and he could be very strict, but he came to me very loving. And he's like, "Hey, I want to check in on you. Our family's just been through a lot. I had somebody reach out to me and say they noticed and they're hearing that you're drinking a lot and there's a lot going on. I don't like that you're heading down that path. Let's talk about it." And I still have no idea who that was to this day, but man, I'm so glad they said something, because it allowed my dad to have a conversation with me. It kept me from going deeper into a hole that would have been really hard to come out of. Especially my family's got some history of alcoholism too. And so, that's also scary to think about. But when I look back at like stuff like that, I'm just like, man, by the grace of God, like somebody said something, not even to me, but to a loved one, that was able to relay that to me. That protected me from destroying my life, honestly, at it as a teenager.
Yeah. And yeah, no, that's, again, people have different ways of coping. And it's not always the silent kid who's normally, a little bit more vocal. It can be the other way around, that kid who's usually pretty well maintained, and they are acting out or displaying behaviors that are not characteristic of who they are, what they believe in. And I think that's a great point. What's one thing now about men's mental health, or just mental health in general, that you wish you'd known in our younger years? You and I are mid-30s now. We always say I wish I could go back to when I was 18 or 16, and do things a little different, or try a little bit harder in this, or study this in college. But in relation to mental health, what's something you wish you can go back and I won't say change, but just a piece of knowledge that would have ultimately, just something you would have known, really.
I wish I would have enjoyed the challenge more, of anything. Like literally, I wish I would have stopped comparing myself and trying to validate everything, and just enjoyed the challenge, whether it have been basketball, I played golf, education. Like I wish I would have looked at my education of not something that like, I just got to get through it, and I'm not as smart as these people, and I'll never be as smart as them. So what's the point? Like, I wish I would have looked back and even at school and just been like, who cares where I fall in the rankings? But the goal is like, can I challenge myself to see what I can learn, or to become a better learner that's going to carry over to other aspects of my life? And same thing with sports. Like, who cares? I may not be a starter, but can I show up every single day and challenge myself to see if I can get there? And if I don't, it's okay. But can I find the enjoyment in the challenge? That's, as an adult now, I do that a lot more. But as a kid, it was more just I compared. And if I wasn't on that level, then, I'll just show up and get through it.
Right. No, that's great. When I look at that question, I obviously went to a school that was a private Christian school similar to your high school. And the demographics of a private school in Southern Indiana are not 50-50. Let's just say that. And so, I still very vividly remember my first day, walked in first grade. I remember the teacher, shout out Miss Bledsoe. I don't know where she's at these days, but last I heard, she was in Africa. But she was an awesome teacher, awesome lady, from what my first grade brain remembers. But I remember walking in and, they're, hey, greet the new kid. Said that verbatim. No, I'm just kidding. But, hey, this is Christopher. Everyone say hi. And I remember just kind of walking in with my hands in my pockets, with my head down, kind of like you bring a rescue dog home and they're kind of like shy and stuff. Growing up, was the only person of color in my class, and especially through middle school, you're hearing, this is what is in, this is what looks good, this is what, and it never, it was never what I looked like or what I was into, kind of, what I got was, you're not who you are because you don't present yourself like the other African Americans I see on TV, or what I see or know about the stereotypical culture. And so, it was interesting growing up, just kind of not feeling confident in who you were, and just who do you confine in? You have the other people of color who go to other schools who are mocking you because you go to a private school. You have the people that you go to school with every day that you've known since first grade that are like, you're really just, one of us, or you're not truly this, you're not Black. It was challenging. And I think that lack of confidence carried over to so many different aspects of my life, especially in particular sports. Always wanting to make the perfect play, always wanting to make the shot. It wasn't enough just to shoot the shot. You had to make it. And, had a mediocre career. Was fortunate to play at the next level. But, who knows where you would have been had you just took the reins off and just said, let it fly. You know what I mean? Other kids on our teams had no problem shooting the ball or throwing the ball trying to make that pass, throwing the ball off three people's heads out of bounds, just point shaving for the other team. But it was one of those things where it's like, man, when I look at this question, I think, had I just not cared what people said, but we were so small and it's such a small community. It was like, man, these people, again, I've known them for a long time. Yeah. I kind of care what they think, you know. And that's, as you were answering, I was kind of sitting back and thinking kind of, what is this for me? I'm very fortunate to, we've had some passings in our families, but never as, extended family. So the mental health struggle doesn't quite, it's the same struggle, but it's not the same struggle, if you know what I mean. And so, since it's vulnerable segment, I figured I'd go ahead and dip my toe in, but, it's for those who are listening, who are struggling, and that's why, a couple episodes ago when we were talking about your identity, taking the experiences from when I graduated high school and got to explore the world, just right up 65 at exit 90, Franklin College. But, just realizing how much that didn't matter was eye-opening, and just realizing, like, all these people you thought you cared about, whose opinions you thought you cared about, don't even talk to these people anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm not sitting here trying to throw a vulgar explicit or explicit or whatever, a vulgar, it's late in the afternoon on a Tuesday. No, but vulgar terminologies at him, or these insulting terms. But it is just kind of like, man, had you not taken things to heart so early on, that from these opinions and these things, it's crazy. It's crazy how it impacts you a little bit, but you know,
I think
does
it's
it
good
really
too.
matter?
And I appreciate you sharing that, because I think it's good too for our listeners to also see that, like, we have different experiences, different life experiences, but the like literally every single person is going through something. Like we live in a world that's broken, that's has sin, that has issues. So we're all going through something. It's but when we can open up and share that with one another and have each other's back, that's when it's that something we're going through doesn't have the power that it used to.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's great too. And as we are two men of faith, and we always try to tie our faith into this as much as possible. Um, there's a verse in Proverbs: "As iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another." And I've used that verse with our team to promote that competitive spirit as we go through a practice. Um, Remember there, I had to write I was coaching at a school previous to the one I'm at now, and we were ticked off. We lost the game, and just didn't play with any fight, didn't play with any heart, and it was just kind of just a bad taste in our mouth. I was talking to our head coach late one night, and I was like, "Hey, I think it's got to be." We had a specific terminology, and it was named after a school here, and it happened. It was a week. Practices that week were not good, and we called it, insert this name of this school's week. I'm not going to do that today, but
I got to know
um,
this after we get off air, though.
yeah. Subscribe, follow, and then you'll hear
Yeah.
the no, but so I was like, man, I think it's got to be like bad week. And he's like, all right, you've got practice. And so I wrote this at the top of the practice plan I made: "As iron sharpens iron, so does one person sharpen another." And I use it, like I said. But that's about, kind of going back to the question here, that's about men in the community with each other. What does that look like practically when it comes to mental health, not just performance?
Yeah. I think it's holding, it's, you gotta, I mean, if you think about it, when you're sharpening iron, like you're grinding, like you're tearing it away. You're tearing the old iron that's dull away to sharpen it. So
Mhm.
part of it is holding each other accountable. Part of it's
Yeah.
saying the hard stuff. Like if you see, for example, if you see a 16-year-old Andrew, drinking too much, like you got to have that hard conversation,
Mhm.
and do that. And it doesn't have to be in like in a difficult way. Some of my most meaningful conversations I've had in life with other men have been watching a game together. We
Yeah.
just sit, we watch a game, something we don't care about, NBA game, something like that. We don't really have like a team that we follow, but we just like to
Yeah.
watch. Hey man, I noticed, whatever you did this the other day, or you think that's a good idea?
Mhm.
You heading down the right path to, like, just doing that. Man, that's sharpening somebody. That's kind of giving them something to think about. But you're doing it in like a non-confrontational, like just kind of laid back, something. The cool thing about guys, man, is that we bond over stuff that we do, right? Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
guys bond over similar interests. So if you play golf together, if you play basketball together, you got a favorite team. If you like music, like whatever it is, like guys bond over activities. So use those activities that you bond over and insert a couple questions here and help one another. and do it in a loving way, but also, you got to sharpen each other. You got to grind away sometimes at the dull stuff that's not working for you anymore.
Right. And it's again just that emphasis on it not always being a interrogation, or not, like, while it is tough love, it's not, why are you doing this for? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a way to have that conversation. We were talking about emotional intelligence in the office. And while it's communication skills are important to have, it's that emotional intelligence that is a necessity as well, that goes in and assists in times of need, uh, when a serious conversation needs to be had. Um, I know. Shout out to my parents, man. They are great, and there was a time to yell at little Chris for thinking it was a good idea to cheat on a test in fourth grade after after everybody had flunked the test the first time. The teacher gave us grace and let us do it again. But there was also a time where to sit down and just have a conversation, like, hey, what are your priorities? What are you spending your time doing? I can think of a camping trip. I wonder if my dad would even remember this. We went, our church used to do camping trips, and I had $5. And to me, that was a big deal. And I chose to buy like a Nerf mini basketball hoop with my $5 in it. That was on like a Thursday. And then we got to Saturday on the camping trip, and we stopped at McDonald's, and I was like, Dad, I don't have any money. He goes, well, remember when you bought this, this, and this? He could have, he did obviously take care of me, but it was a moment of reflection where it's like, all right, like, that's what I needed to hear. And that was the tone in which it needed to be in. So not all people are going to respond to a scolding way of holding them accountable. And sometimes it's just a conversation, and I don't know if there's any two that would probably understand that more than you and I, being coaches. Well, I'm sure our coaches would, who aren't yellers per se, but can have they know when it's time to yell and get that attention, but they also know when it's time to have that conversation.
Yeah. Well, I'll give a practical tool. I use this in my mental training. It's an acronym. It's SERCA, SERCA. And if you ever want to have like a hard conversation with somebody, if you could do these things first for them, if you can give them this through your, the relationship, it helps. Here's the 5 things. Number 1, stability. So have stability with them. You're consistent with them. It literally could be stability that you're a teammate and you're just there with them every day and you're cheering them on every day. Give them stability. Give them some excitement. Have some fun together. Recognition. That's the R, recognition. So give them, when they're doing something well, let them know they're doing something well. Connection. Right. Connect with them. Find things that you have in common. And then the last one is advancement. So help them advance, help them get better. If you could do those 5 things with somebody, that opens up the door to have really any hard conversation you could have. Yeah.
That's great. How do you? Can you repeat that acronym?
Yeah. So it's SERCA, SERCA. So it's stability, excitement, recognition, connection, and advancement.
That's good.
And so my question for you, coaching now is, and this kind of goes with what we were talking about. Why do your athletes listen to you?
I mean, I don't know. I think they have trust in me.
Okay. Trust of what?
I think they have trust in that I know what I'm talking about in my knowledge.
And what you're talking about in your knowledge, what does that do for them?
that gives them clarity. It gives them stability, gives them excitement, gives them recognition. The C, I didn't get a chance to write that down, but I know I'm being facetious here, but it really, that is again why that's great. And I appreciate you giving that to me. And oftentimes, you know, I'm glad it has a name and a framework, because to those who aren't listening, who might provide stability and recognition, but there still needs to be some excitement about coming to practice, and
Yeah.
and I every day we huddle up right before, and we hey, pick a random kid. How was school today? What'd you
Yeah.
learn? And more times than not, the answer is good or boring. And then what'd you learn? Math. It's like, all right. And then they made it a joke so that every kid I called on would say math. One of the funniest ones was I think it was long subtraction. I guess that's a terminology in school these days.
Is that a thing?
I had the same response. I said, dude, is that even a thing? And he was like, yes, it's a thing. And I was like, that's just I was like, then what is it? He goes, well, subtraction, but with long numbers. And I was like, yeah, so
So
we
it's
went
just
on
regular subtraction.
we went back and forth for no joke, like 5 minutes about how that's not a thing. And he stood on the sword and said it's a thing. So, I still tease him to this day about it. He's like, brah, 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 it's a thing, brah. It's like, all right, whatever. But and in this, it's there's an element of being a human. And I think I don't want to say this without like I do feel like I make a good connection with our boys, and it's not all, I have a sense of humor, and I sometimes something will happen in a serious moment and I will die laughing in the middle of practice. And, again, like those moments are like, that's what the kids are going to remember the most. Like, oh, you remember that day when Tom got hit in the head with the ball because he wasn't looking for the pass after we said, hey, watch for this pass right here, and then Coach Carruthers just laughed, not at the kid, but at the moment.
Yeah.
I think that goes a long way, and being an adult figure and having the ability to influence and impact young men and women. And I do love that acronym there. And I'm going to do some research here offline. But jumping into our last question for this segment, what would it look like for faith communities, churches, team chaplains, faith-based programs, et cetera, to do a better job of creating space for men to be honest?
Yeah. All right. I'm going to do a selfless plug for FCA here for my coach's ministry. I do want to put this out there, and I hope there's some listeners that might be interested in doing this. We're starting a program. It's been done at other FCAs, but not here in Southeast Indiana. We're starting a program through FCA next year. It's called character coaching. And basically what it is we find people in the community and we connect them to teams. And that person in the community can come in for, once a week, 10 to 15 minutes and give a devotional and tie it into a character lesson, and also how that ties into the athlete's sport. And then the role of the character coach is also going to be to show up a little bit before the talk and get to meet some of the players, to hang out a little bit after the talk and watch practice, maybe pop into some games here or there. So it's not like a huge time commitment for this person, but it is a way to connect, and it is a way to build an extra layer of support to the coaches and to the athletes. You mentioning this is an initiative that I am starting, that's kind of literally just started here within the last couple of weeks. I'm just trying to build a pool of interested people that would be interested in doing character coaching. I think this would be a great way for men to get involved and give back to young athletes, to give back to the boys that are playing sports, to be able to get in there and see a man from outside the sport organization to come in and share, but also just be there a little bit for those kids. Maybe that kid doesn't feel comfortable talking to their coach or their team, but maybe a character coach might be that avenue for them. So I had to throw that out there. Just
I mean,
too good of an opportunity. To pass up on that one.
And those listening, if you want to learn more, certainly reach out if that's something you're interested in. And small groups, men's small groups, Bible studies. Those are think about the altar calls at church, where they're like, come down in this crowd of 5,000 people if you're going through something, and it's like,
right, yeah.
Have you seen my limp? I've got to no,
right.
But that's the shout out to those who I've got a longtime friend. His mom was a former colleague. He's been doing a Bible study for a little bit. That's awesome. And just small things like that.
I would tell our athletes listening to this too, that if you want to be in a community of people that support one another at your local school, ask about FCA meetings, Fellowship of Christian Athlete meetings. We're in a lot of schools here. If there's not one at your school, let us know. And you could, students can start. It's student led, so students can start it. You just have to find a sponsor that would open up that space before or after school to do it. But it's been really cool to see through FCA, a lot of our athletes that meet and they just feel connected to a community. And sometimes we have people show up that they're like the faith part of it. They're like, I'm not sure about this, but I play a sport and I know there's going to be other people that play a sport and I'll go. And then they get to grow and understand the faith side of it. So by no means, it's not one of those, you have to be a Christian to be there. We invite everybody. We want everybody to come in, that we do things in a Christian way and we believe what the Bible says. But man, we want everybody to come in and just know, that belonging that they have, in that community of Christ.
Yeah. Let's jump into the challenge. All right. Give an actionable, specific, low barrier goal to our listeners here. First, we'll start with the athletes. If you could give every male athlete listening one permission slip, something they're allowed to do or feel or say that they've been told they can't, what would it be?
I would say from a purely athletic standpoint, not necessarily a mental health standpoint, but I would say it's okay to struggle. It's okay to not be good at something. That would be that would be my permission slip as an athlete. If you're not a great ball handler, that's okay. Put in the work and get better at it and be okay with just small improvements. You don't have to be, you don't have to go in and be like, well, I'm not the starting point guard, so I suck. That's no, you might find the things that you're good at and work on the things that you're not great at. So that would be my one permission slip. I think mental health wise, for our athletes is just, embrace the struggle of getting better and growing that athletic standpoint.
Yeah. And I mean, you when you said that, I was like, man, that's awesome. I don't know if he realizes he's saying this could be dual answer for mental health as well. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to have your days, but are you striving to be better, or are you letting the negative emotions drown you out? And so, that was great. What's one thing a coach can do this week to make it safer for men and the players in their program to be honest about how they're doing? And I'll get my pen because we have a busy week this week.
Yeah. I've tried this at different schools. Some it worked at, some it didn't. I think you have to have the relationship with your athletes, but I've had conversations with athletes before and just asked them what's one of your biggest fears? I think having those individually with athletes, like, if you fail, like if something doesn't go right, what are you afraid of? Man, that gives you a lot of insight to know like where athletes are placing importance, and also whose voice is the loudest in their life.
Right.
So that's just a great conversation to have. And it allows the athlete to open up a little bit and just be like, man, I'm fearful of, if I make a mistake, like my dad's going to scream at me the entire way home and I just can't handle it. And it's like, then you understand as a coach how to handle that athlete a little bit better, and maybe give them the tools to be like, look, this is how you handle when that happens. You can't change how your dad's going to respond, but you can change how you handle it. And so that's one. I would say another one is just very, very simple, but just pull your athletes off, and not even just you, but make your assistant coaches, have them do it too, like a different athlete each day. Just pull them off to the side for about 30 seconds in practice and just tell them, why you love them. Man, I just that's not performance based. Don't go like, man, I love you because you're our leading 3-point shooter and you help us win, but just, and I love that you come in every day with a smile on your face, ready to, I love how you come in and compete, and your heart that you have, just keep bringing that every day. Like, I think it's awesome. And, so I think just that's super, super simple. Doesn't take any time, but you've had those moments. I've had those moments in life where an adult is like, man, I don't remember saying that to you, but as a kid, you're like, man, that changed everything.
Yeah. That happened with my dad the other day. I had the opportunity to speak. He was being recognized for an award in our community, and I told a story that shed a light on the type of man he is and the character he is. And he got up and was like, man, I was hoping he wouldn't remember that story. And it's like, oh no, I remembered. For the dads listening, what's the conversation you need to have with your son, or what's a conversation that dads can have with their sons that they haven't had before?
I think for a dad, man, I really look up to my father and how he handled everything from, literally being, married and 2 kids to, waking up the next morning and he's a single father. And so how he handled that, I really look up to it. He was hard on us when we needed to be, but when I said earlier that some of my best conversations have been over a basketball game, a lot of those have been with my dad. We every year, it's going on right now, the NBA playoffs. Every year when the NBA playoffs come on, I always think back to my dad whenever I was in my late teens, early 20s. It'd be summer night, late at night, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, we'd turn the NBA playoffs on. Neither one of us, like, we loved basketball, but we didn't like have a team that we just, got into it. And we'd be sitting there talking. And I think one time I was talking to him about, my wife now, like, man, I really love this girl. And, I think I want to propose and spend the rest of my life with her. And like, I'm mid sentence and he's like, oh, did you see that dunk right there? And I'm like, yeah, that was awesome. And then he comes back and he's like, I'm really proud of you. Like, I think that's awesome. Yeah. And it took all the tension out of the conversation. But we just got to have like good heart to heart conversation. And then whenever it got kind of like too like serious, because we're guys, we don't want to be too emotional and serious, we'd be like, man, what a backdoor cut, like what a defensive play.
Right. Yeah.
And
that's
so
hilarious.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What would it look like for men to normalize checking in on each other the way women seem to do more naturally? Yeah. What would that culture shift actually require?
I tell you one thing that's really cool, since, really coming on board with FCA the last 6 months, is one of my favorite things to do is just text somebody and say, hey, I'm praying for you today. What specifically can I pray for?
Yeah.
I mean, people are very, they're open about what's going on in their lives. And I love it. Like, it's been so cool for me to connect deeper with people, and lets them know like, hey, somebody's, cares about me. Like, I have people that do the same for me. Like, they'll text me and be like, hey, I'm praying for you today. Like, that's a really cool thing for me to be like, man, there's like people in this world that are praying for me. Like that's all, like it makes you feel so awesome. And so just that simple text to somebody is, I think, huge.
Yeah, no, it is. I've been on the recipient side of one of those from a former we weren't classmates, schoolmate, TJ McGill. Shout out TJ.
Oh yeah.
He dropped that to me, and it was at a time. Honestly, it came at a time where we were getting into like the nitty gritty of the start of the season. Maybe it was in the middle of the season, and we were toward the first quarter of the season, third of the season, and the results that we were looking for and expecting hadn't started to come yet. And it was kind of like, we've talked about it in previous episodes, kind of like, man, what did I do? Was this the right decision? Am I letting these people down? And just receiving that text was a humbling experience, because it lets you know that there's people out there who may not even be keeping up with your season, but truly just care about you and what you've done and what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And it was probably his prayers that turned our season
around. For sure.
As the recipient of one of those texts, that goes a long way. Long way.
For sure.
Well, man, this has been great. I know we had originally planned on answering these questions for us, but I think we should leave it up to the audience, and just give you something to think about as we turn off our laptops and get ready to face the reality of our jobs and what we have to do, the rest of our responsibilities. But this last segment is a letter to younger me, and it's kind of 3 questions that you wished that you had known or told yourself when you were younger. And so we'll jump right into those. What do you wish someone had told you about asking for help when you were young, or if you were an athlete, if you were a young athlete, or if you were young? Not everyone, we understand, is an athlete. But again, what was something you wish someone had told you about asking for help when you were young? Second question, what would you say to the version of yourself who's carrying something alone and thought that was strength? And lastly, what was one thing about mental health you had completely backwards then that has either changed or been redefined? So again, those 3 questions. What do you wish someone had told you about asking for help when you were younger? What would you say to the version of yourself who's carrying something alone and thought it was strength? And what was the one thing about mental health you had completely backwards back then? And with that, Andrew, this will conclude another episode of the Mindset Huddle. It's always a pleasure to do this alongside you, and looking forward to the next episode.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Mindset Huddle podcast. We hope this episode encouraged you. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and share it with someone who could benefit. We'll see you next time.